Welcome to From Bottles to the Boardroom, where we explore the blend of the best, the people, places, and possibilities of Southern California wine country. I'm your host, Connie Stouffer, and each episode we sit down with local leaders, innovators, and dreamers who are building business and community among the vines. Because here in SoCal wine country, business growth meets the good life, and every great conversation starts with a good pour. In this episode, Diane Strand shares her incredible journey from Hollywood to impactful entrepreneur, revealing how her early passions in the arts and a daring 15-second decision transformed her life. From working on iconic shows like Friends to building a nonprofit that champions artists and individuals with developmental disabilities, her story is a masterclass in pivoting with purpose. Diane Strand, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. So I'm going to just have you start by telling our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Diane Strand from JDS Studio here in Temecula, California, and I've been a serial entrepreneur for 23 years. I have a career prior to that from the entertainment industry, working in Hollywood on a couple of shows like Friends and General Hospital, and built the high-def control room at Staples Center. But what I'm really about is the arts. The arts have really impacted my life and my business. Work in the arts industry, and I'm here to say that you don't need a backup career when you work in the arts.
That's amazing. So I want to start by just asking you what got you interested early in your career in the arts and entertainment, and kind of what inspired that, and how did you get your start?
Well, I always say you can't connect your dots looking forward. You have to look back. And my first dot really shows up all the way back in second grade when I wanted to play Betsy Ross in the school play. And everyone really told me that I shouldn't, or I should think about doing something else because I couldn't read. I am dyslexic and I was undiagnosed at the time. Something else kind of showed up, a little bit of tenacity at that point, and I was like, well, watch me, and somehow I figured out how to read, or at least how to audition, and I got that part of Betsy Ross in the school play, and I realized that, I don't know that I had the knowledge or the perception at that point, but I knew that I liked it. I had fun. I got a lot of positive feedback from it. And so it was something I really wanted to pursue. And also what showed up in second grade was probably my entrepreneurial business spirit, because there was a candy selling contest in second grade, and there was prizes, whoever sold the most candy. And there was probably dating myself, a black and white 19-inch television that I really wanted, that if you sold the most candy, you could choose to win. So here I was, a little second grader in an elementary school all the way up to eighth graders, and I sold the most candy in the whole school. I enlisted my parents' help, and I went door to door in business parks, and I won that little 19-inch black and white TV, and I still work in television. I'm an entrepreneur, and I love the arts, and that's kept me connected all the way through school. Anytime it got hard, which it did a lot for me, kept me connected because I wanted to be in the play. So I had to figure out how to make the rest of it work.
That's really a full circle moment there with the winning that TV and inspiring you in your career. That's really amazing.
Yes.
And I want to ask a little bit, because I've always been curious, what was it like working on Friends and working on a big show like that?
Well, it was actually one of my first shows right outside of going to college. And I had some entrepreneurial little jaunts before I even went back and ever finished my degree. But working on Friends, when I came out of Cal State Northridge with my bachelor's degree, it was one of the first shows that I kind of landed on through a connection at school. Networking and connections and going to school, that's really what it's about. But I was able to really work my way up through that, I started as a PA, literally getting dry cleaning when I started there. And quickly, because I was a little older and a little bit more mature at that point, and I moved up from the as we used to call it, the pit room, and I started coordinating. And by the end of the first season, I was actually really line producing already and had moved into an associate producer position. I did get to the set every once in a while, but I didn't hang out on set. I was back in the production office. The set was on the Warner Brothers lot, and we were in an office across the street from the Warner Brothers lot. So I used to drive a little go-kart when I needed to go over to the set and bring something over. I got over there much more when I was a PA and had to run stuff back and forth from the office than when I was actually in a higher position. But actually, I did become, in that, a few months that I was there working, I was only there one season. And when I was working there, because I quickly left there and went to Disney, but I did get very close with Matthew Perry, and he would come to the offices, and we used to sit and have tea together.
Oh, wow.
And he was just really, really a nice guy, and it was just really, it was a great experience. It was one of
Yeah.
those experiences that really changed also the trajectory, I would say, of where I ended up going in the entertainment industry, because I moved into line producing so quickly and really leveraged my skill with numbers. While I lacked it in letters and reading, which, I've conquered that. I'm a best-selling author, and I figured that out too. But numbers, I've always liked numbers, and they kept me grounded even in school, because I could do math, even though I couldn't do English and writing.
Well, that's amazing, and I feel like there's definitely a through line here from second grade through your career now about the entrepreneurship. And so maybe talk a little bit about what inspired you to start your own business and kind of pivot from working in Hollywood and entertainment and working in your own business, but still in the entertainment space.
Well, always have loved the arts, and that was never anything that I would probably ever compromise on in a career trajectory. But it's interesting because I say that the arts connect to every industry that is out there. It doesn't matter what you do. I mean, here we are. Yes, we're talking about business and economics and even being in Southern California wine country. But to me, we're doing something very creative. We're doing a podcast, and we're on video, and we're telling our story, and we're doing that. And that's really what I think the arts really bring out in that aspect. The change from leaving the career in Hollywood to becoming an entrepreneur, that shift truly happened in about a 15-second split decision being made. But when I talk about connecting my dots, it's very evident. I know exactly why I am where I am and what I'm doing, because there were entrepreneurial genres. Even before I worked in Hollywood, I had Images and Imagination Children's Theater, where I was a part of redevelopment in Hollywood and Theater Row, with busing in kids from the inner city to come see plays in Hollywood and learn about the arts and do this. And this was before I had a college degree. This was before any of that. I was doing this, not even knowing I'm working in economic development and redevelopment and putting any kind of label to it. But this is just what I was doing, and at that time, my big idea was this is how I was going to get discovered as an actress, but this is how I became an entrepreneur and became really a producer and a director, and it led me into that trajectory of all the things that it did. And by the time it came to this trajectory of jumping into entrepreneur and really leaving what you would think was the dream, right? The dream was to work in Hollywood. And, I did. I worked there. I told you my Matthew Perry story. I have a great story with Michael J. Fox from Back to the Future when I worked at Universal, and Christopher Lloyd, and, just some Barbara Streisand telling me that, I am her A1 producer when we were at the Shrine, and think I'm living those dreams, right? To then, I was actually working at the time in reality television, on shows like Big Brother and Survivor, but I had a 3-year-old, and I was missing bedtime and bath time and dinner time, and my dreams and goals were shifting and evolving. And after coming home late from this, at that time where I was at, it was a very win-lose culture. And, I was venting to my husband, who is now my partner in life and business, um, all the stuff and missing bedtime and bath time. And he looked at me, and it was probably a joke. Now his story says he had it deliberately set out, but to me, it was, when I look back, it was just so nonchalant. We were like fluffing the sheets, getting kind of ready for bed. And he said, well, what if we like sold the house, quit our jobs? And he was an actor and a pretty big director in Hollywood too, and it was sold our house, quit our jobs, and, became entrepreneurs and started our own production company. And I went, yeah, let's do that. And everything changed within 15 seconds. We were doing that. I put in my notice. A month later, our house sold like super quick, and we were moving to North County, San Diego at that time, to start JDS Video and Media Productions, Inc., which now has JDS Actor Studio. We have a nonprofit arm, JDS Creative Academy. I have a 10-year-old festival called DigiFest. I have a TV show on ABC. And I am more living my dream today because I get to impact. I get to, I look over here and I see 30 adults with developmental disabilities living their dream. And it's everything to me, and it changes everything, and it has so much more value and meaning. And not that the entertainment industry doesn't have its place and its importance and the things that it does, but for me, this is everything.
That's so amazing. And even seeing through lines to that early work where you're doing, trying to bus inner city kids in to see the arts, to make sure that they can be exposed to arts and find their dreams, to the work that you're doing in your businesses now and making sure that people with developmental disabilities and artists and creatives have a place to shine and can explore that. I think that's so amazing that you've been able to carry that through your career in the different ways you've done it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's, and I found my way to more different stages. I started wanting to be an actress, and, now I'm on stages in a whole different way.
100%. So, can we talk a little bit more about the Creative Academy, DigiFest, kind of those aspects, and how you've built your business from the production studio in North County, San Diego to what it is today?
Sure. Well, in 2003, when we packed everything up, we landed in North County, San Diego, and just started really, old school, because at that point, if you would have asked me, I knew nothing about being an entrepreneur. The things that I had done before were, just, scrappy little, kind of precocious woman who wanted to try and make a name for herself and trying to figure that out. And now all of a sudden I'm starting something intentional, and I'm creating a business that not only had to, support me in some way. I had a husband, it was my husband and we had a 3-year-old child. So it made everything in a whole different perspective, making that happen. But, I just kind of fell into what I knew worked before. I really did. We went to what I learned in second grade. We went into the business parks and we started knocking on the doors and walking in and saying, hi, this is who we are. This is what we do. And, I had a little stint in between, working at doing the Grammys and the DNC at Staples to when we were working in the Lakers and the Kings, and the company that I was contracted through, they lost the contract, and I ended up having to find other work. And at that time, I landed at Amgen Pharmaceuticals as an independent producer, making, and this is really what shifted everything for me in the entertainment space to really saying yes so quickly, was I was making videos with Amgen Pharmaceuticals showing patients how to take medicine, telling the stories of the patients who were dealing with life-threatening diseases like cancer and rheumatoid arthritis and debilitating things, and looking at what video production could do in so many other ways that were making such a difference. And that was giving me that knowledge. And that's why it was like, yes, let's do this. So that's where we started. Is we went into, in North County, San Diego, there's a big biotech community. And we just literally went knocking on the doors, and I knew how to kind of talk to them. I understood regulatory and regulation and what they had to go through with the FDA and how ands had to change to thes. And they didn't have in-house production companies at that time, and there weren't a lot of us around. So we were new on the scene, and that's what we really specialized in. But I really leaned into things that what I preach and practice and teach today, which is visibility. Leaned into that. I connected with, at that time, papers were still around, the North County Times, and we were in the North County Times, and one of the first organizations that I joined as an itty bitty business of just my husband and I, with the two of us, and really no real revenue that was outside of paying that month's bills. I joined the North County Economic Development Coalition. I think it was corporation for them. And I didn't have a whole lot to offer but time. And so I gave a lot of time, and that really helped grow our business. And it continued to do that when we kind of relocated up to Temecula into Riverside County from North County. That was the first organization that I stepped into. And here I am 18 years later, still a very active member, because it makes a difference. You don't get involved in something if you're not going to be involved. Why pay dues if you're not going to be involved? And it's really how I've grown my business. It's how a small mom and pop has been able to grow into a nonprofit and into what it is able to do, to have the resources. And now I employ, 15, 16 people, and really contribute to what workforce development and economic development has been able to give back to me. I can give back in ways that if you would have asked me 10 years ago if this would have happened, I wouldn't have been able to see it in this way. But at the same time, as I look back, my dots absolutely, totally connect to exactly why I am, what I do, who I do it with, how I share my business, how I work with others. It really is a great timeline to see.
That's truly amazing. I think you're so right about, for me in economic development, I couldn't have known 15 years ago that I'd be right here doing what I'm doing now. If I had had my wildest guesses, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But looking back, I'm like, oh, it all makes sense what brings us here. I'm going to ask a question, because you have been a member of the EDC for such a long time, and both in North County and here in Southwest Riverside County in Southern California wine country. You're also a member of the Temecula Valley Chamber. And I think sometimes people ask themselves, well, why should I be a member of both? They're both membership organizations. They're both working with businesses in the community. What's the difference or value of being a member of both organizations? And so maybe if you just wanted to share, because I know that we're members of the chamber too, and we get a tremendous amount of value out of that and they do great work here. What would you say if someone was like, should I get involved in economic development? What's the value of joining an organization for your business?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I always say that, at the EDC, you get through the gatekeepers, that you don't have gatekeepers at the board table at economic development. At chambers there, you meet the gatekeepers, as well as I really believe that when you are trying to build relationships of value, you get to really do that in some of the more impactful ways for economic development, to where I was able to, especially in the beginning, I that was where I contributed a lot of free video to the EDC, and that helped give me the visibility of the quality of work that you can do. At the chamber, it's really about meeting and learning, and then being able to do business in a different way. When I was business to business only with video production, the EDC, I was a member of a chamber because I was a community stakeholder, and I believe that that's important. But now I think it's switched, as in the chamber, now I get to kind of play on a different level with different people that I couldn't play with before, but the EDC allowed me to play in that level, because of the way it was. They're very different while they seem somewhat similar, because you have some of the same organizations, but I think you go in with a different mindset when you sit at a chamber table, which I sit at. I chair committees there. I'm very active. I'm very involved, but I have a different mindset as a chamber member than I do as an EDC member when I sit down, and I really look at it as a regional focus and knowing what is happening outside my community, which has, even in my business, now I work nationally, now I work globally. And that's where, as you start to grow, because some of my best friends are some of my competitors in my backyard now. So, I have to stretch out beyond my means, beyond my back door.
Yeah. We'll be right back. Today's episode is brought to you by Castile Builders. Looking for a commercial construction partner you can trust in Southern California? For over 20 years, Castile Builders has built a reputation for excellence as a full-service general contractor. From design build and design assist to tenant improvements, structural rehabs, concrete tilt-ups, and lead construction, their team brings hands-on market experience to every project. Their standout skill is composing conceptual design build budgets before any plans or drawings are paid. This is to create an understanding and direction based on the project needs, site conditions, and budget. Castile Builders believes great buildings start with listening. They take the time to understand your immediate needs while planning for long-term flexibility and growth. Every project is guided by detailed planning, strict quality standards, and skilled professionals. With careful team selection, consistent client reviews, and disciplined weekly project and phase meetings, they deliver projects on time and on budget. Castile Builders, building today with your future business growth in mind. And we're back. Speaking of your back door, can you tell me about what inspired you guys to move from North County, San Diego to Temecula?
Well, the crash happened in 2008. And we were 5 years into our business, and things were shifting and changing. I was at that time pregnant with my third child, and wondering what was going to happen. A lot of those businesses that we had established with in North County, they were crashing and burning, and bringing a lot of their video and multimedia all in-house, because it was easier for them to kind of, in 2008, technology was growing. People were hitting the market. They were being able to employ people internally at a lesser price than even project by project, and doing things different, which now in some sense has shifted back the other way, where it's somewhat easier to take people off your payroll and hire outsource. I have opinions on all of it, but that's not what we're here to discuss.
Yeah.
But that was what was happening in the time, and so we had to kind of make a shift. And Southwest Riverside County is a little less expensive to live in than North County, San
Hmm.
Diego. And we knew we could keep going back there for business and drive there. So we were making some changes. And when we first moved into Riverside County, we also realized that in Southwest Riverside County, there wasn't as much video production going on as there was in San Diego. So once again, we were a little newer on the scene. And instead of having to dust off my resume and think if I was going to start driving an hour north back to Hollywood and seeing what was there, um, we did different things. We joined the chamber. Of course, the very first thing, I was already connected with Southwest EDC because of North County EDC, and I stepped right in, which was the biggest payoff that ever happened because Abbott is one of my biggest clients, one of our biggest donors and supporters for what we do. And I'll never forget the day sitting at an EDC board meeting, and all of a sudden, Ken Carlisle, who's the senior VP of Abbott, pushes his business card across to me as I was sitting next to him. And I was like, looking like I don't know who you are. I probably have 10 of your business cards sitting on my desk. But he kind of did one of these, flip it over, and I turned it over, and it was this little message that says, I've noticed all the great work you've done for the EDC and in the community, and we have a customer appreciation event that I would love for you to be able to put in a proposal on. And that was a $250,000 contract that happened in 2010 and has 100%. We have redone that contract. I mean, obviously, we are now 15 years later, but redone that contract at least 6 or 7 times over with customer appreciation and videos and different things that we have done with Abbott over the last 15 years, and changed our business, changed our life, changed what we could do to help and serve and do for others. And I, will ever be grateful for Ken Carlisle and Shaw and Abbott, who are also big supporters of the EDC. But that's really the business. That's how you do business. You show up, you say yes, you serve, and then it comes back in spades.
That's a perfect segue because a big part of what we do here at the EDC is help bring businesses to the region. So as a business owner and entrepreneur that's been doing business in the community for a really long time, can you share a little bit about what's it like being a business here and being a part of the business community, a business leader, and kind of working within the community?
Well, I have to say, I truly believe here in Southwest Riverside County, Southern California wine country, we are spoiled. I don't think that there are other business communities like we have. This is a great place to have a business. It's very, while I would say there's a lot of us, like, even from the video production, from being the one, one of the one and onlys in the area, there's like 15 or 20 of us now, but yet we all get along. We all play well in the box. We all kind of realize that there are certain people who they have certain areas and markets, and not to say that, we're giving business away, but we don't have the need because there's so much business to go around to have to walk all over our friendly competitors, I guess you could say. And as well as I think the nonprofit, because I work in that space, there is something going on here every single day, every weekend. But yet people keep showing up, people keep helping and supporting. It's a very supportive region. Um, for, I would say, even a dicey political, um, era that we live in, and we actually even live in kind of a politically driven area of Southern California. I still think that we try and look past that here and do business for the betterment of business and well-being of our community, which is tough today. So I have to say that I give kudos because I know that it's split. I know that there are very flagrant sides on both sides. But yet there is an air of professionalism and community that really goes on here in South, in Southern California wine country.
Yeah, and I've lived in communities that are very one side or the other political policy wise, and I would say that this region is very purple. I think we have both sides, and I think in a lot of ways that's good because it requires you to work together, right? Because it's so diverse in people's political leanings and ideologies and things like that. We have to work together, and I think people are very inclined to partner with each other, whether that's organizations or communities, and it creates a lot of community, right? A tight knit community, even if you might know somebody has a particular political leaning or initiative or something like that. I think it requires us to come together on a lot of things.
And we have conversations. I have not found anyone that I couldn't at least have a friendly differences of opinion conversation. So, and I think that's why I said I think we're spoiled and we are here. I don't think that is true because I've been in North County, San Diego. I've played down in San Diego. I've played up in LA and, even in Hollywood and see where it is. And, I've been the only woman at a table and had to get my voice heard. It's been much easier here than it was in Hollywood, but neither way, I always found a way to get my voice heard.
I can't say that I speak from experience in Hollywood, but I can say from my professional opinion, like I think there are a lot of women in leadership roles here, like in business and community. It's as a woman in business, I think it is much easier to be at the table and can fight to have your voice heard and be a part of those decisions here.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about DigiFest, and I know we've talked a couple of times about not being able to connect dots looking forward, but I just wonder, like, what do you have on the horizon? Maybe things for people to look out for, what you're working on, things like that.
Sure. Well, DigiFest, I don't know when exactly this is going to air, but it's an annual event. It's happening this year in 2026, April 24th, 25th, 26th of 2026. It's our 10-year celebration. It really is so much more than a film festival. It filled the void here in the Temecula Valley. There was an international film and music festival that went on here for like 17, 18 years. When we first came into the area, we were sponsors of it and involved. And then it kind of, politics got involved, but it kind of went away, and it was a little bit of a conundrum. But when it was gone for a couple years, the city of Temecula and some of the other organizers and stakeholders kept saying, "Oh, you should do something, Diane. You need to, bring back the festival." And I'm like, I don't know that I want to walk into that, but and I'm not really, if you heard my story here, I'm a TV girl. I'm not really a film girl. Not that I don't love film and, I dabble in it. And now today, that's a whole nother story for another podcast. I'm doing more film today than I ever was. But in that sense, I'm a TV girl. I'm a digital girl. I work in video. I work in also the industrial part of video, not just the narrative. And I'm more a documentary. I'm in the marketing space and doing that. So I was like, if I'm going to create some sort of festival, it has to include all of those things. So, and I was like, I don't know. I'm like, "And what would I even call it?" I'm like, what, DigiFest or something? And someone went, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, and it just kind of happened that way where it was like, and then, once you say it out loud and you kind of do it and it has a name, and then somebody else heard it and they're like, I thought you were going to do the festival. What did you call it? Digi? And I was like, so it just kind of, within 2 or 3 months, I was like, fine. One thing I've always known is if you're going to do something, especially that's how I started the nonprofit, was fine, let's just have a meeting. Let's pull some people. The first one was around my kitchen table. That's how the nonprofit started. Let's have a meeting. We formed a board of directors and it just took on a life of its own. I got a couple of people. We did call a couple of people who were involved with the Temecula Film and Music Festival who started that and I was friendly with. We called them. We got a couple people. We formed a committee and it just kind of started, and by the end of year 2, when literally it was probably just 3 of us doing all the work, we're like, oh my God, what are we doing? But then, we couldn't let it go. And, now it's taken on a life of its own. We've been through COVID. We've been through everything. We've been able to, hang in there. And here we are 10 years later, and we've changed it. So it's much more an intimate thing. We only sell 100 tickets. So if you're interested, get a ticket fast because they are selling fast. We bring in high-level celebrity writers, producers, director from Hollywood. We bring Hollywood here to the Valley, and podcasters, influencers. This year, we're bringing in big business entrepreneur people who are global, who like Kim Walsh Phillips and Bill Walsh and Justin Guarini. Not only is he American Idol season 1 finalist next to Kelly Clarkson, he's a Broadway actor, but he is a huge entrepreneur keynote speaker. He'll be here. Curtis Young, Dr. Dre's son. We have, Glee, Sam Larson from, the names just keep coming. I could run them down. There's probably like 30 speakers. So, there's something for everybody in all mediums, all genre, whether you are in the creative narrative, documentary, traditional entertainment industry stuff, or you're more in the marketing, podcasting, music, animations, websites, photography, gaming. There's a place for you here as well. So we bring it all together. We have a lot of fun. It's a little foodie kind of thing. We bring in food and red carpet. We call it the blue carpet here because JDS Blue, and we're all about, developmental disabilities and autism. So we roll out the blue carpet and it's great. Now, your second part of your question, I don't know. Do we have time for this? Because, I kind of also say, well, yes, I connect my dots looking back. I'm a huge manifester. You have to manifest. You have to see what you want into the future. You don't have to know all the steps to get there. You just have to be willing to take the next step and let the how reveal itself along the way. That's why you look back to connect your dots, but you manifest. I'll tell you this. The story really quick was, remember when the lottery started in California, I was working for Disney. It had just started. All my little Disney friends, we were sitting around and we were talking about what would you do if you won $1 million from the lottery and blah, 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 right? So this is like early 90s, right? $1 million, huge. Today it's not that much, but huge amount of money, right? And I was like, I would open my own production company. Well, there's my manifestation. I'm going to open my own production company. I would do this. I talked about I'm going to have this and all the things that I would do, which looks a lot like kind of what I have right now. Fast forward, I didn't have to win the lottery. That's what I thought I was going to have to do. I was going to have all these things in place and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't. I just had to be willing to take the next step. I totally manifested everything I have right now. I'm manifesting what's next. What's next is the arts across America, the arts across the world. I'm going to Kenya later this year. It's coming true. That's where it's happening. I'm taking the arts and this dyslexic little girl. I have a best-selling book. I have my next book coming out in about the next 4 months. It's going through editing now. So it's just like, this is how it happens. I do see it. I see big. I got lofty dreams and goals, but then at the same time, it's like I do see 7 to 10 years. I want to retire. I want to, experience what that is. I'm trying to get in a lot of travel now. Well, it can be workations, but but yeah, that's, manifestation. So if you see it, you believe it, then you have the courage to take the next step, and the how reveals itself. I am a dreamer, not in my sleep. You want your dreams to become a reality. You need direction, realization, evaluate it. You need action and accountability to create the momentum for the reality.
That's so true. And I've always thought to myself, I think a lot of people think manifestation is just like dreaming it or imagining it or saying it out loud, but it requires the action too, right? Even if you don't, like you said, know all of the steps, you got to take the first next one, because nothing's going to happen without action. And you're a perfect example of you just taking that step and doing that action and then making those dreams come true. I think that's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun too. And,
Yeah, and it's fun.
Pivoting is real. That you asked earlier, how did I get to to Southwest Riverside County and moved to Temecula out of North County? I had to pivot. 2008 happened. The crash happened. Things had to change. Things had, the vision, the end result didn't change. I didn't have this then. I was still working towards that. But the pivot changed everything, because I certainly wasn't going to get it in North County, San Diego, but I got it here. So to get
That's
it,
amazing.
I had to pivot. I had to change and make it happen.
Speaking of pivot, we're going to pivot to our last question, and it's something I ask all of our guests because we are in Southern California wine country, and this is called Bottles to the Boardroom. So if someone's coming to Southern California wine country for business or looking at bringing their business, but they're going to spend some time in wine country, where are the top 3 places they should go while they're here?
Well, one of my favorite wineries is Oak Mountain Winery for a couple of reasons. One is Johnny and Karina are wonderful humans to get to know and meet, and they really do interact with their guests, which I really like. And they're great sponsors of our nonprofit, as well as Danza de Sol. They're also an amazing sponsor, and they have a beautiful location, out in their space that I would say that's a great place to go. And then just, this is completely just because I love the scenery. I really think that you get a different view that I haven't seen in any of the other wineries from Botaya. Because you walk in and it really looks like a place that Joanna Gaines just decorated. It's just white barn house, kind of look, farmhousey feel. They got a pool, which is great. And their food, I like their wine. And then when you are looking out of their backyard or their back of their winery, it is kind of like a backyard in that sense, but it's a different view from all the other views that I've been to, which you kind of get similar looks and views, but I don't know the angle, but there's just a different angle that's there. So those are some of the 3. I could go on Europa Village because I love the people there, and South Coast, I could name a few, Renzone.
It's hard to choose just 3.
You got to stop me. So, and the funny thing is I really don't even drink wine. I like to go to the wineries. I love the people, I'll sip and this and that. And I like the cheering, but I'm not a drinker really at all. And if it's maybe, I can't say I don't like to maybe get the little bit of intoxication level, but I don't like the drinking aspect of it. So I don't go there much, but I just like the scenery and the atmosphere and the people. Great place to have a meeting, great place to, send, friends and family just to have a great afternoon.
Yeah, it really is. I think there's something out there for everybody. Whether you drink wine, there's also ones that have beers and distilleries. I think Oak Mountain has a distillery.
They do,
there,
yes.
I think.
And the bread at Murray, I can't think of their name right now, but they have the best cheesy bread. So and the horses.
I think I've seen the sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah, so there's really a different experience for everybody, regardless. You can just go for the vibes. A lot of them have live
yes.
music or events and things like that. So
Definitely, I do that in the summer on Fridays. Robert Rankin Walker, he is an event producer here in the area, and he puts on great shows out in the wineries.
that's amazing. Well, Diane, thank you so much for coming on the show with me today. I really enjoyed hearing about your story, and I really want to say thank you for all that you do in the community. You're a big supporter of lots of nonprofits and entrepreneur and creating jobs and opportunities for people in the arts. And I think it's amazing, and I just want to thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Connie. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That's it for today's episode of Bottles to the Boardroom. If you enjoyed this conversation, follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone building something bold or someone who simply appreciates a great story paired with a great glass of wine. I'm Connie Stouffer, and I'll see you next time in Southern California wine country, where business growth meets the good life, and every great idea starts with a good pour.